The Galaxy S26 Ultra might have one of the best smartphone cameras ever made, but most people are only using about half of what it can actually do. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. It really helps me keep bringing you more tech breakdowns like this one. If you're just opening the camera app and tapping the shutter button, you're basically driving a supercar in first gear. That's because hidden inside the camera app is Samsung's Pro mode, and it completely changes how the phone takes photos. Instead of letting the phone make every decision for you, Pro mode gives you manual control over things like ISO, shutter speed, focus, exposure, and white balance. In simple terms, it turns the Galaxy S26 Ultra from a smart camera into a creative tool. And honestly, that's where this phone gets really interesting. Now, to be fair, the standard camera mode on the S26 Ultra is already excellent. Photos come out sharp, colorful, and well exposed almost every time. Samsung's image processing is doing a lot of heavy lifting in the background. But the moment you want a specific look, maybe a dramatic silhouette, motion blur, cinematic lighting, or detailed night photography, auto mode starts to hit its limits. That's where Pro mode matters. One of the biggest advantages is raw photography. Normally, your phone saves compressed JPEG images. They look great immediately, but a lot of image data gets thrown away. RAW files are different. They keep far more detail, which means you can edit shadows, highlights, colors, and exposure later without destroying the image quality. Samsung lets you save raw DNG files directly in Pro mode, and that's a huge deal for anyone serious about mobile photography. What's even more interesting is that Samsung doesn't aggressively process those raw shots. There's less noise reduction and less automatic color tuning, so you get a cleaner starting point for editing. That opens the door to effects you simply can't create properly in standard mode. For example, shutter speed control changes everything. If you set a very fast shutter speed, like 1/500th of a second, you can freeze fast motion perfectly. Great for sports, pets, or moving cars. But if you slow it down to something like 1/10th of a second, moving lights and subjects turn into smooth motion blur. Suddenly, city traffic looks cinematic, waterfalls become silky, and night scenes feel alive. That's the difference between taking a photo and crafting one. Samsung also handles zoom differently in Pro mode, and this part is surprisingly important. Normally, the phone automatically switches between cameras behind the scenes. In Pro mode, each lens stays locked within its own zoom range. That means no random switching in the middle of a shot sequence. So, if you're shooting consistently with the telephoto lens or ultra-wide lens, you maintain the same visual style across every image. It gives photographers much more consistency. Then there are the exposure monitoring tools, which honestly feel borrowed from professional cameras. The Zebra monitor highlights overexposed areas with stripes, so you instantly know when highlights are blown out. False color mode is even more advanced. It color codes exposure across the entire image. Green usually means proper exposure, while reds and yellows show overexposure and blues show underexposure. For high-contrast scenes like sunsets, concerts, or backlit portraits, these tools are incredibly useful because smartphone cameras often struggle deciding what should actually be exposed correctly. Samsung also gives you different metering modes. Center-weighted metering works best for subjects close to the camera. Spot metering exposes based on one exact point you select, which is amazing for dramatic lighting situations. Matrix metering analyzes the whole frame, making it better for landscapes. These are the kinds of controls photographers normally expect from dedicated cameras, not smartphones. But the really crazy part is Expert RAW. Samsung basically created a second pro camera system inside the phone. Expert RAW looks similar at first, but it adds experimental photography tools that most people probably never expected to see on a smartphone. One feature allows multiple exposures. You can combine several shots into one artistic image, almost like double exposure photography on old film cameras. Then there's the virtual neutral filter. Real ND filters reduce incoming light so photographers can shoot long exposures during daylight. Samsung simulates that effect digitally, which means you can create motion blur effects even in bright sunlight. The aperture feature is another interesting one. You can adjust background blur almost like changing aperture settings on a DSLR camera. Lower virtual f-numbers create stronger background blur, while higher numbers keep more of the image sharp. And Samsung clearly went all in on night photography. There's a dedicated night sky mode optimized for stars, a night-long exposure mode for city light trails, and even Astrophoto mode, which can capture galaxies and constellations during long exposures. The phone even includes constellation overlays to help you identify what you're pointing at in the sky. That's honestly wild for a smartphone. There's also Astro Portrait mode, which combines portrait photography with astro shots. The phone captures a person first, then blends them with a long exposure of the night sky. It sounds complicated, but Samsung automates most of it. And one feature that surprisingly feels practical is virtual reflector. Photographers often use silver or gold reflectors during portraits to bounce light onto someone's face. Samsung recreated that effect digitally, letting you control lighting direction, intensity, and warmth directly inside the phone. Even underwater photography gets attention with Ocean mode, which adjusts colors to reduce the harsh green-blue tint common underwater. The biggest thing to understand here is that the Galaxy S26 Ultra isn't just trying to replace a smartphone camera anymore. Samsung is clearly trying to bring real photography tools into a pocket-sized device. And yes, mastering all of this takes practice. At first, ISO, shutter speed, and metering modes can feel overwhelming. But once you start understanding how those settings affect an image, photography becomes much more intentional and creative. You stop just capturing moments, you start designing them. What's your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments section. See you in the next video. Take care.